Welcome to the Experience Darden podcast. I'm your host, Brett Twitty, and you are listening to a new episode. On this episode of the podcast, I'm excited to share my recent conversation with Larry Mueller and Merav Frazier. Larry and Merav work closely with our international students here at the Darden School of Business, and I recently connected with them to talk more about their backgrounds, what they do here at Darden, their passion for international students, the resources and programming available to international students, and so much more. I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. And as always, if this episode is helpful for you, please like this episode and subscribe to Experience Darden so you never miss an update. And remember, you can always check the episode description for links to Darden blogs, social channels, and more. And now, without further ado, here is my interview with Larry Mueller and Merav Frazier. Merav, Larry, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, great to be here.
Thanks so much, Brett.
Well, it's great to see both of you. What an exciting week, launch week here at the Darden School of Business. Merav, how are you doing?
I'm doing really well. Excited to welcome all of these first-year students, and it's great to start putting some faces to names.
Yeah, all the buildup. 12 months in the making, roughly, as admissions folks. I mean, we launched the application a long time ago, early action, round 1, round 2 for full-time MBA students. Seems like forever ago, and finally here at this day. Finally have everybody here in one place. It's great.
Yeah, it feels like we've gotten to know them all so well, and yet we haven't met them. So it's really exciting to finally see them and talk to them in person.
For sure. Larry, how's the week going for you?
It's fantastic. So as Merav would have heard me say many, many times, my favorite days of the year are graduation, and my second favorite are the orientations, right? So I love getting to meet new people. I love sharing with them, what a wonderful Darden grounds we have here, share with them just kind of the enthusiasm of our kind of faculty and staff teams. And so it's been great. I've enjoyed giving some tours of the Darden School and even some tours over on the UNESCO World Heritage Site that is our historic lawn.
How many tours have you given this week, Larry?
Let's see, 4 tours of Darden and 2 tours over on Central Grounds.
All right. 6 tours already, and the week's it's only Tuesday. Yeah.
Well, we started early, Brett. We started on the Sunday afternoon.
All right. Well, there's still time. That tour number could creep up. So, Larry, tell us a little bit more about who you are. What's your role here at the Darden School? And obviously, you've been at UVA for a while. So, curious to hear about your full story here.
Well, thanks so much, Brett. I'm Larry Mueller. So this is my 32nd year on the faculty. I taught operations for many years. I've done a host of other things in combination with teaching. And my most recent adoption has been my focus on international students. So I'm assistant dean for global advising, but effectively kind of dean for international students. They're 100% of my focus now. And since COVID, I've given up all teaching and really am focused on our kind of 36% international students. And these are foreign national students, many of them first time in the United States. So I couldn't be more delighted than the opportunity to kind of, share my thoughts about how our academic system can really help them grow and grow quickly in their ability to kind of choose any pathway that they would like and be kind of benefited by this Socratic teaching method.
All right, we're going to get into some of the support and resources and programming for international students here a little bit later in the conversation. But Merav, tell us more about you. Who are you and what's your role here at Darden?
Yeah, so on the admissions committee here at Darden, I serve as Senior Associate Director for Global Recruitment, which means one of my primary responsibilities is to work with our global student population. I've been at Darden for 5 years, but I've been at UVA for much longer. I've been at UVA for about 15 years. In my previous role, I worked for undergraduate admission at UVA, and I also worked with international students. So I've had quite a history of working with our global student population, both at the undergrad and now the graduate level coming into UVA and Darden.
All right. Well, let's talk a little bit more about what you enjoy about working with international students. You both have such passion for these students. Merav, what's your favorite thing about working with international students?
Honestly, it's really that diversity of perspective that they bring. I think they challenge us in so many ways to think differently about how we approach the world and obviously at Darden business. And I find it fascinating. I think every day, every year, I learn something new words in different languages. The Brazilians swear I'm, fluent in Portuguese. I'm not quite. I know like 5 words maybe, but it's always exciting to learn new things from their cultures and to connect with folks from all over the world. I think that's really my favorite part of it.
Yeah, I think about the events that you host. Typically, you have a day where you do like an around the world with Darden
Yeah.
series of programming. You want to talk about this?
Yes. So we have one actually coming up at the end of this month. I'll be hosting my Around the World Day. It's August 30th this year. And basically, what that means is I host 4 different webinars, so 4 different time zones to accommodate all of the international students at whatever time zone works best for them. So we start off early in the morning around 8:30, kind of in the East Asia region. We work our way towards kind of South Asia, India. Then we have Africa, Europe, Middle East, and then the Americas, right? So Canada, Latin, South America. And I host these sessions just to give students an opportunity to learn more about Darden, our academic program, our application process. I bring in current student panelists to discuss their experiences. And it's really just kind of an hour of opportunity to learn more about what we have to offer and ask any questions about the application process. And I do it typically twice a year, kind of right before the early action deadline and right around the round 2 deadline as well.
All right. And we typically will have in a full-time MBA class somewhere between 25 to 30 countries represented, sort of a ballpark number. Some years a little higher than that. But consistent with the programming you're talking about, we have people coming to Darden from all over the world, any manner of time zones, really. And to Larry's point earlier, this may be actually their first time in the United States. So a really big life change for them.
Yes, exactly. And so we want to kind of ease that transition. So I think as part of these webinars, we talk about expectations for international students and things that they can get involved with socially as well. That's why, I have the student panelists to share their experiences. And we want to help ease that process as early as the application. So not just when they get accepted and start the matriculation process, but as early as just thinking about MBA programs. We want to help them understand what they can expect when they come to Darden and Charlottesville as well.
All right, Larry, what do you enjoy about working with international students?
I think what I really love is to hear them share kind of their work experiences and how their culture and kind of background and educations have helped shape kind of how they're making business decisions. And then I ask a little bit more about kind of the learning styles. And then we talk a little bit about how the Darden School is, relatively unique in our approach using, as I mentioned before, the Socratic method, where participation becomes the valuable piece of learning. And most of our international students have not yet been in a learning environment where that participation is such a critical part of learning. Many have been involved in kind of lecture-based education systems, or when a faculty member asks a question, the expectation is that the only time anybody would raise their hand is if they had the right and perfect answer. And that is so opposite of kind of how we approach the learning process. We want to hear not just what different perspectives are, but we want to hear the different approaches, even if that approach may not be ultimately the easiest or best approach. It's important to hear them so that the discussions and understanding about how other people also might be thinking the same way can all kind of come together and have kind of a qualified kind of group learning process.
And I know you've gone out into the world. You've done some in-person recruiting in different countries over the past couple of years, where you've led some case discussions. Do you want to talk about those experiences?
Absolutely. I love to go out on the road into kind of local cultures and do a case, because maybe your first case is one where you're being expected to participate, and at the Darden School that participation is a graded activity, but it can be, I don't know, a little intimidating. But sometimes if you're surrounded by people who kind of have come through the same educational process and come from the same culture, you can gain a little bit of early courage to kind of speaking up and not worrying about whether you're right or wrong. And I think just gaining those early opportunities kind of gives somebody just that greater courage so that when they actually arrive at Darden, they feel better prepared and ready. So sometimes I'm able to do these in person. In India, I tend to go to 3 or 4 cities and do this with, 12 to 15 incoming students. I'll do the same usually in East Asia, a few spots in China, Singapore, and sometimes in Korea. And I've also been able to go to Latin America on occasion. But what it takes there is a little bit of a critical mass. But Merav and I have also hosted some of these kind of via webinar style or kind of participative style. And that works too, because it gives people a bit of an understanding about how that kind of classroom experience is going to go. And it encourages that participation because there's nothing better than watching an international student who's not accustomed to being called upon first off in class feel comfortable that they understand the material and confident enough to kind of speak up and share their thoughts, their perspective, and their ideas about how to attack the problem.
And Larry, I have to ask this because we got to know each other when you were leading the Gimba program, a previous version of the Gimba program, which included international travel as a core part of the program. Students would go to Brazil, uh, Western Europe, typically France, Germany, would go to India, and also spend time here in the US as well.
And China, right?
And China.
Right.
So how many countries have you visited? This number was pretty high the last time I asked this question.
Yeah, well, the number for Darden is not so great, but my total number of countries visited is 94, and I've been to all 7 continents.
All right. All right. I had to get that in there because I figured it was higher than the last time I asked you, which it was in the 80s the last time I asked you. So I want to talk about the International Student Orientation Program, or ISOP, as it's known here at Darden. There's so many acronyms for students to keep straight. This is one of them. Larry, tell us a little bit more about what ISOP is all about.
So the International Student Orientation Program is designed to do 3 primary things. The first one is to welcome all international students and have them recognize that this Darden community is truly theirs. We traditionally will hold the International Student Orientation Program as first amongst any of our programming for incoming students. And part of our reason for that is we want people to feel like they get to kind of make the Darden School their own first. They get to be the first to know the inside information. They get the first tours. They get kind of the first opportunity to kind of call it their own. And it just gives them a little more comfort when they help to kind of welcome other students in for Darden before Darden, and then kind of the whole class as in this week. So they know that I can rely upon them, and Merav can rely upon them, and Denise Karoli can rely upon them to kind of help these incoming students kind of know what's important. The International Student Orientation Program is a group put together by recruiting. So Denise Karoli, who is kind of our chief in charge of international students with regards to the recruiting process. So she is the coach that is dedicated to international students amongst all of our kind of senior coaches who have specific disciplines. Merav, who knows every international student inside and out before they arrive. She is truly, Merav, you're truly the magic, because you are able to provide the sense and understanding as they're arriving as to what we might expect and how we can approach people kind of individually in recognizing them as people, not just as students. In addition, we are able to put together a team of support. And this year we've had Kristen Anderson from the career portion, and we've had Andrea from our Future Year Scholars program. who provided assistance, and they provide just additional touch points. But it's an all hands opportunity. Office of Student Affairs, all of career, admissions, all kind of participate in kind of not just welcoming these students, but kind of bringing them up to speed, leveling the playing field. So for recruiting, it is to say most of these international students have not recruited in the US environment, but they would like to have their very first job in the United States and start using their optional practical training. And as such, Denise brings in guest speakers from the drama department to help people learn improvisational speaking, how to be able to network, how to be able to, give kind of that 30-second elevator pitch, because all of these things are new. Many international students rely simply upon their resume to help them get their job. But much more of the United States process is personal interaction. So if you said, what's probably the most critical learnings, the biggest delta for any of these students, it's learning about the different recruiting elements. Then there's an element of acculturization, right? We want them to be able to feel like they're more at home in the United States and understand some of the nuances. We take a trip over to Central Grounds and tour Jefferson's Historic University, but we also recognize that in the United States, we try and be more and more open about the fact that we've made many mistakes along the way, and we continue to make mistakes. But we would like to be open and talk about what our challenges are and how we overcome things by building better and stronger community with one another. And then finally, we have something called Football 101. And Merav was like, I know, we'll mention it. And that's where we have 4 former football players come and teach a little bit about American football, but talk about the different conferences. And then there's this kind of fun and famous quiz that helps identify commonly used business terms that were original to kind of American football. And we capped that off with dinner in the president's box in the stadium. And all of our students get to run the field and play with the brand new 8 footballs that'll be used in this brand new season by the UVA football team. So it's pretty exciting and pretty memorable. We try and do lots of things. And the last thing I'll say is we try and get people academically ready as well. So always have the senior associate dean for our MBA program lead the case. And so they'll have their first case collectively amongst all international students. Full 85 minutes, no breaks, nobody leaves the room, everybody's engaged, lots of hands up, very exciting. And then we'll kind of debrief that and talk about elements that allow people to kind of academically excel and care for themselves while they're here at Darden.
So you're saying it's a very full week.
Well, this year it was a powerful 4 days of 12-hour days, but people loved it. Nobody waned into the evening without having great fun.
All right, Merav, how do you feel about this year's programming? How did it go?
Yeah, I think I would describe it as jam-packed, full of fun, right? Like we get you the information you need about resources, academics, careers, but really it was just a lot of fun. And it was a great transition coming into Darden. It was just a few days to kind of get your bearings, get your feet on the ground, navigate around Darden, figure out where everything is, meet new people from all over the world, and just enjoy spending time with them in a structured but fun environment. I love the improv classes. I think that's one of my favorite parts because it gets them to loosen up a little bit. I think everybody's so nervous on the first day, right? Like first day of school jitters, very common, but the improv class helps to transition into let's have some fun. Let's enjoy this process. And I really do think that then carries over both into the academic setting now that we've started launch week and for the rest of the year. So it sets a really positive tone for how their next 2 years are going to be at Darden.
The question for you, because everybody's relocating to Charlottesville as well. How do people sort of get acquainted with Charlottesville. Obviously, you got to figure out a lot of things when you get here, grocery stores, maybe you need furniture. I mean, there's a lot that people potentially have to arrange for. How do you help students get comfortable in Charlottesville?
Yeah. I think one of the first ways to start is to look at the admitted student portal. When students are offered admission, they have access to this amazing portal that has so much information, just a wealth of knowledge in terms of housing locations and transportation options and lists of restaurants, lists of grocery stores, things like a checklist of things that you need to do during the matriculation phase to make things easier. Like, okay, did you do this? X, Y, Z, go down the list. Our students themselves have built lists and slide decks that showcase, okay, here's some things to keep in mind, like if you want to get a US driver's license or how to set up your bank account or a new phone number. So a ton of resources have been put on that portal. Also, access to our student ambassadors is really throughout the year. Our student ambassadors, the second year, so the rising second years as the incoming students come in, love to help and provide that additional guidance and support. We also host several webinars throughout the matriculation process and throughout the year to help with that transition. Typically right after, maybe a week or so after students are offered admission, we host a specific session for international students about what do I start thinking about now that I've been offered admission or now that I've paid my deposit? What's that next step look like? And we'll talk about housing. We'll talk about certain, next steps in terms of exams or sending transcripts, or what are the things that they need to be thinking about as they make that transition into the United States. We hold visa sessions with our international student office about what documents they need in order to request their student visa. And so we try to make that process as smooth and seamless as possible for our students.
Yeah, no shortage of resources, no shortage of support. Larry, you've been in Charlottesville for quite a while. What would you want international students listening to this podcast to know about Charlottesville? Obviously, Darden is part of the story. UVA is part of the story, but Charlottesville is bigger than both of these places.
Yeah, thanks, Brett. Charlottesville is very welcoming in that it has lots of diversity within the town alone. It's not what one would call just a college town. I mean, the university has been here and it's been here since 1817, but it's a town that's surrounded by a county. There are many professionals, there are many people, there are many artists and artisans. It has the most restaurants per capita outside of New York City itself, as well as having the most grocery stores per person. And that's an absolute number. And I've always thought to myself, how in the world can we have the most restaurants and the most grocery stores? Well, people like to exercise, they like to be involved. So somehow people are able to create on their own and be inspired by the restaurants that surround us. But everyone will tell you their favorite restaurants. Everyone will tell you and share with you their favorite recipes. They'll share with you their favorite grocery stores and why. You have a friendliness as you get to become a regular in different establishments, be it restaurants or grocery stores or pharmacies, because people recognize you. It is not, even though the surrounding area with Charlottesville kind of makes us a total of about 200,000 people, it still feels like a very intimate environment when you walk into any establishment regularly and they kind of know who you are. And our international students begin to get that same flavor. The other thing is that there's lots of outdoor exploration opportunities around Charlottesville. You can stay as close and local as, walking up the Monticello Trail from kind of the ground level all the way up to Monticello, looking at all the labeled trees and enjoying Monticello. As a student, you have a discount, and if you ever bring guests with you, you get to go for free to Monticello. So you'll get to do that a number of times. The also opportunities that are close by is just driving 20 minutes. You can go over to Afton and walk through the very first train tunnel that went from the east side to the west side of the Appalachian Mountains. It's a 2.5 mile walk underneath, and you need to bring your flashlight, but it's kind of exciting to kind of walk through that kind of history that has been untainted by the addition of electricity or anything else. So you're getting to kind of see it just as it was, except the train tracks have been removed. And then with the Appalachian Mountains just kind of right at our forefront to the west, you have the opportunity for hiking, jumping off some rocks into some nice cool pools of water during the summertime, some of the fantastic overlooks into the valley. And then there's kind of the National Park Skyline Drive, which kind of gives very detailed hikes and has little lodging and opportunities for noshes along the way. So I would say we truly are in Central Virginia, 2 hours from Washington, D.C., or 2.5 if the traffic's not so great. A little over an hour from Richmond, and 2.5 hours from the beaches in Virginia Beach. So well located. You may say, does everybody have that much free time? We have the spaces and spots for free time. So don't feel like there's not going to be time for everything. Just know that you won't do everything. You're going to select what makes you at your best. And that's what I think Charlottesville and the Darden School try to offer, is the opportunities for you to be able to be at your best.
Larry, I assume you've been asked that question before. That was very, very comprehensive answer. Are you also moonlighting for, say, the Albemarle County Tourist Board?
Yeah, I've never been asked that question before, but I feel blessed to be a reasonably good extemporaneous speaker.
All right. Well, just a few more questions for you before we wrap up. Merav, what would you want international students to know about the community here at Darden, about Darden generally?
Yeah. I think, the best way to describe Darden is that we're a very collaborative community. I think our students here are just quirky and delightful. That's typically how I would describe our students. They're warm and welcoming, and they really do strive for success, not only in the classroom, but in their social networks. And so for candidates that are considering Darden, I think something to remember is, do you want to be in a place that is very much a we process? We're going to solve these problems in the classroom. We are going to work together to recruit for these internship opportunities and for these post MBA jobs. We are going to work together to come up with fun and innovative programming and cultural evenings and start new clubs. Every year, there's always a new club. And so I think it's very much a we process at Darden. And that's something that I would love for international students to see about our community.
Larry, how about you? What would you want international students to know about Darden?
I want them to know that we highly embrace the diversity of background, of perspective, and of culture that they can bring. The Darden School Admissions Office is really building a constellation every year, and it's picking all the different stars to be in the constellation of our classroom and our community. And your selection into the Darden School is one where it's not just what you've done or where you live, but it's a combination of these things and how you are able to kind of share that with others that makes you a rich part of this environment. And so just know that, if you come to Darden, you're here because you are going to gain a knowledge and understanding of those that have lived and worked in this environment for a long time. But what you're going to bring is a perspective that allows each of us to understand a diversity of how we think through things, how we approach problem solving, and a recognition of the differences in circumstances globally that cause us to say, hey, there's not just one process and one way to do things, but we ourselves are all growing to be better able to deal with the changes that happen kind of throughout the globe and in business because we have a community of friends and partners in and amongst all of our students that kind of enrich kind of our forever ability.
All right. Well, last question for you here. Larry, what's a piece of advice you would share for our prospective students listening to this podcast, maybe thinking about their own MBA journeys, maybe considering Darden? What would you encourage them to think about?
I think the most important thing to think about is when you're choosing an MBA program to attend, understand what the rigors are going to be, but understand what you're going to be able to get out of it. The most important thing, I think, as students approach the Darden School is to say, I know I'm going to work hard, and I think I'm going to put a lot into it, but here's what I want to get out of it. And I'm going to work to kind of glean all the marrow out of the opportunities that I get. Because that's how Darden best responds. It responds best to those who are actively engaged, not sitting back, but reaching out, asking for what they want, kind of suggesting what kinds of things can make a difference. Because ultimately, we so highly value the input because we love making change for the better.
All right, Merav, what's a piece of advice you would share with prospective student listeners?
For the application process, I would definitely advise students to be themselves, really understand the whys or have a good understanding of the whys of their story. I think it's important to be able to express to us through the written application, through the interview process, just where you've been, where you'd like to go. How does Darden fit in along the way? That's something that is very important to get across. And it's not so much about what you think we want to hear, but more focus on, what do you want to share with us? What makes you unique, right? What makes you tick? We want to know more about you. So focus in on your story and the whys. And I think, once you're in that process of matriculating or even at an MBA program, my advice would be stay open-minded and seek out resources. Like Larry was saying, ask questions. Come to us with feedback. Larry hosts lunches for all the international students to get that type of feedback, right? We want to learn more about you, even beyond your application process and during your time here. So really seek out those resources, provide that feedback. It's a constant learning and growing process. So be involved in that process.
Well, Merav, Larry, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I think of you as such tireless champions, advocates, and incredible resources for our international students. And I'm sorry it took us this long to get you here and to talk with you about all that you do to support these students here at Darden. But thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks so much, Brett. This is our great joy and our love. So we look forward to this stirring interest in Darden and stirring interest in reaching out to us.
And that was my interview with Larry Mueller and Merav Frazier, exploring all the resources and support available to international students here at the Darden School of Business. As always, if you have any comments, suggestions, requests, anything you'd like for us to cover here on the podcast, we're all ears. We can be reached at Darden, that's DARDEN, @virginia.edu. Until next time, stay safe, be well, and thanks for listening.